Welcome to Black on Black Sports. I'm your host, Pharaoh Althea, and thank you very much for joining me. Today's presentation is about Althea Gibson, a woman that was a really great golfer and an excellent tennis player. I hope you enjoy what you're about to watch. Once again, thank you for joining me. Althea Gibson was an American tennis player and professional golfer, and one of the first Black athletes to cross the color line of international tennis. She was the first Black tennis player to compete at the U.S. National Championship in 1950 and the first Black player to compete at Wimbledon in 1951. Althea was born on August the 25th, 1927 in Silver, South Carolina. She grew up in the Harlem section of New York City. Althea loved to play sports, and in the 40s and 50s, most tournaments were closed to African Americans. Gibson kept playing and she kept winning until her skills could no longer be denied. And after years of winning a steady string of American Tennis Associated titles on the African American circuit, she was finally allowed entry to the major tournaments. In 1956, she became the first African American to win a Grand Slam event, the French Championships, actually. The following year, she won both Wimbledon and the U.S. Nationals. Then won both again in 1958 and was voted Female Athlete of the Year by the Associated Press in both years. In all, she won 11 Grand Slam tournaments, 5 single titles, 5 doubles titles, and 1 mixed double title. She is one of the greatest players who ever lived, said Bob Ryland, a tennis contemporary and former coach of Venus and Serena Williams. Gibson was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame and International Women's Sports Hall of Fame in the early 1960s. She also became the first Black player to compete on the Women's Professional Golf Tour. At a time when racism and prejudice was widespread in sports and in society, Gibson was often compared to Jackie Robinson. Now, as I said, Gibson was born in 1927 on August 25th. And she was born in a little town in Clarendon County, South Carolina, to Daniel and Annie Bell Gibson, who worked as sharecroppers on a cotton farm. The Great Depression hit rural Southern farmers sooner than much of the rest of the country. So in 1930, her family moved to Harlem, and they were a part of what we call the Great Migration. And there, Althea's 3 sisters and brothers were born. Their apartment was located on a stretch of 143rd Street between Lenox Avenue and 7th Avenue. Now, Gibson quickly became proficient in paddle tennis, and by 1939, at the age of 12, she was the New York City's women's paddle tennis champion. Gibson quit school at the age of 13 and, using the boxing skills taught to her by her father, engaged in a life of what she would later refer to as street fighting, girls basketball, and watching movies. Now, she was afraid of her father's violent behavior after dropping out of school, so she spent some time living in a Catholic protective shelter for abused children. In 1940, a group of Gibson's neighbors took up a collection to finance a junior membership and lessons at the Cosmopolitan Tennis Club in the Sugar Hill section of Harlem. At first, Gibson didn't like tennis, a sport she thought was for weak people. As she explained, I kept wanting to fight the other player every time I started to lose the match. In 1941, she entered and won her first tournament, the American Tennis Association New York State Championship. She won the ATA National Championship in the girls division in 1944 and 1945. And after losing the women's final in 1946, won her first 10 straight national ATA women's titles in 1947. So Althea had a natural ability to play, and she was a national athlete basically all her childhood. And despite her growing reputation as an elite level player, Gibson was effectively barred from entering the premier American tournament, the United States National Championship, which is now called the U.S. Open at Forest Hill. While USTA rules officially prohibited racial and ethnic discriminations, players qualified for the Nationals by accumulating points at sanctioned tournaments, most of which were held at white-only clubs. In 1950, in response to intense lobbying by ATA officials and retired champion Alice Marble, who published a scathing open letter in the magazine American Lawn Tennis, Gibson became the first black player to receive an invitation to the Nationals, where she made her Forest Hill debut a few days after her 23rd birthday. Although she lost in the second round in a rain-delayed 3-set match to Louise Burrow, who was the reigning Wimbledon champion and former U.S. national winner, her participation received extensive national and international coverage. No Negro player, man or woman, has ever set foot on one of these courts, wrote journalist Lester Rodney at the time. In many ways, it is even a tougher personal Jim Crow busting assignment than was Jackie Robinson's when he first stepped out of the Brooklyn Dodgers dugout. In 1951, Gibson won her first international title, the Caribbean Championship in Jamaica, and later that year became one of the first black competitors at Wimbledon, where she was defeated in the third round by Beverly Baker. In 1952, she was ranked 7th nationally by the USTA. In the spring of 1953, she graduated from Florida A&M and took a job teaching physical education at Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri. During her 2 years at Lincoln, she became romantically involved with an Army officer who she never named publicly. And then she considered enlisting in the Women's Army Corps, but decided against it when the State Department sent her on a goodwill tour of Asia in 1955 to play exhibition matches with Ham Richardson, Bob Perry, and Carol Fageros. Many Asians felt an affinity to Althea as a woman of color and were delighted to see her as a part of the official U.S. delegation. Gibson, for her part, strengthened her confidence immeasurably during a 6-week tour. When it was over, she remained abroad, winning 16 of 18 tournaments in Europe and Asia against many of the world's best players. On May 27, 1956, Gibson became the first African-American athlete to win a Grand Slam tournament, which was the French Championship single event. She also won the doubles title, partnered with Briton Angela Buxton. Later in the season, she won the Wimbledon Doubles Championship again with Buxton, the Italian Championships in Rome, the Indian Championships in New Delhi, and the Asian Championships in Ceylon. She also reached the quarterfinals in singles at Wimbledon and the finals at the U.S. Nationals, losing both to Shirley Fry. The 1957 season, in her own words, was Althea's year. In July, Gibson was seeded first at Wimbledon, considered at the time the World Championship of Tennis, and she defeated Darlene Hard in the finals for the singles title. She was the first black champion in the tournament's 80-year history, and the first champion to receive the trophy personally from Queen Elizabeth II. Shaking hands with the Queen of England, she said, was a long way from being forced to sit in the color section of the bus. She won the doubles championship also for the second year. Upon her return home, Gibson became only the second black American after Jesse Owens to be honored with the ticker tape parade in New York City. And Mayor Robert F. Wagner Jr. presented her with the Bronze Medallion, the city's highest civilian award. A month later, she defeated Louise Bro in straight sets to win the first U.S. National Championship. Winning Wimbledon was wonderful, she wrote, and it meant a lot to me. But there is nothing quite like winning the championship of your own country. In all, she reached the finals of 8 Grand Slam events in 1957, winning the Wimbledon and U.S. National Singles title, the Wimbledon and Australian Doubles Championship, and the U.S. Mixed Double Crown, and finishing second in Australia Single, U.S. Doubles, and Wimbledon Mixed Doubles. At the season's end, she broke yet another barrier as the first black player on the U.S. Whiteman Cup team, which defeated Great Britain 6-1. With Gibson winning her last 55 matches of the season, plus her first 2 matches of 1958, she won 57 matches in a row. In 1958, Gibson successfully defended her Wimbledon and U.S. National Singles title and won her 3rd straight Wimbledon Doubles Championship with the 3rd different partner. She was the number 1 ranked woman in the world and in the United States in both 1957 and 1958, and was named Female Athlete of the Year by the Associated Press in both years, garnering over 80% of the votes in 1958. She also became the first black woman to appear on the covers of Sports Illustrated and Time magazine. In late 1958, having won 58 national and international singles and double titles, Gibson retired from tennis. Prior to the Open era, there was no prize money at major tournaments, and direct endorsement deals were prohibited. So her professional tennis career, however, it really didn't go anywhere. She said that when I looked around me, I saw that white tennis players, some of whom I had thrashed on the court, were picking up offers and invitations. And suddenly it dawned on me that my triumphs had not destroyed the racial barriers once and for all as I had thought and hoped. So in 1964, at the age of 37, Gibson became the first African American woman to join the Ladies Professional Golf Association tour. But racial discrimination continued to be a problem. Many hotels still excluded people of color, and country club officials throughout the South and some in the North routinely refused to allow her to compete. When she did compete, she was often forced to dress for tournaments in her car because she was banned from the clubhouse. Although she was one of the LPGA's top 50 money winners for 5 years and won a car at the Dinah Shore tournament, her lifetime golfing earnings never exceeded $25,000. While she broke course records during individual rounds in several tournaments, Gibson's high ranking was 27th in 1966, and her best tournament finish was a tie for second after a three-way playoff at the 1970 Lynn and Mick Buick Open. So Althea retired from professional golf at the end of the 1978 season. So as you hear this story, this is why here at Black on Black Sports, we will be highlighting the history of Black athletes and their struggle in America and all around the world to make sure that they get their respect and that they get the notoriety they need for their hard work for the upliftment of Black people in sports. There's been a long history of discrimination against Black athletes in America. And here on Black Sports, we plan to highlight these atrocities and we plan to uplift these athletes. Our sister Althea Gibson was an excellent athlete, and she's done a lot for tennis and a lot for golf. And she is really a superstar when it comes to sports and a megastar when it comes to women's sports and a gladiator when it comes to Black people and civil rights and our ability to break down the barriers from racism. So once again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure that you share this video, like it, and please subscribe to the channel. And in the words of our great brother Kobe Bryant, rest at the end, not in the middle.